India, with its diverse agroclimatic settings, is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. National innovations on climate-resilient agriculture and the National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture were some of the schemes operationalized to tackle it. With rapid soil degradation and a staggering 92,000 crore plus of produce loss to spoilage annually, the hurdles are plenty. What will it take to tackle the diverse challenges and revitalize the agricultural sector? Mr. Prasad Gopalan, Global Sector Manager of Agribusiness and Forestry, International Finance Corporation, World Bank Group, will chair the session. Towards a better course for sustainable agriculture and food systems and analyze these issues. Mr. Prasad Gopalan is an authority on agribusiness and forestry with 15 years of dedicated experience at IFC. He has a graduate degree in chemical engineering and master's degrees in environmental engineering and public policy, the latter from Harvard University.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this panel on food systems. My name is Prasad Gopalan. Thanks, Sanu, for the kind introduction. We have an esteemed list of panelists here to discuss the pressing problems that are facing the food systems of today and seeing what solutions are being arrived at to counter these issues. We have Mr. Krishna Mohan, who is the Chief Resilience Officer for the city of Chennai. Mr. Simon George, President of Cargill, India. We have Ahmed from Arya Dairy Farms, and we have Syed Nadeem of Shah's Organics. Thank you for your participation in this seminar and forum. It'd be great to get your inputs and feedback on what's happening out in Tamil Nadu and more broadly how the food systems are set to evolve in the future. So just to set the stage, I just wanted to give you a set, from my vantage point, give a set which is pretty applicable around the world, especially in India or even in Tamil Nadu, how the food systems are shaping up, right? You have, by 2050, the global population is going to increase by about 2.5 billion. It's going to be more urbanized. The consumption of protein is going to increase. Consumption of convenience food is increasing. So the whole, the food systems need to change to adapt to this change in consumption pattern. And the demand for food is going to approximately projected to increase by about 50% over the same period of time. And there's more demand for sustainable, safe, fresh, and high quality food. So with that as on the demand side, on the supply side, we have severe constraints to face this demand, right? So we have potentially 20% less arable land that's going to be available due to soil degradation, land issues, biodiversity losses, etc. We have the agriculture and livestock sector contributing to 24% of greenhouse gas emissions. We have potentially 25% gap in freshwater supply that's needed for growing the food that we need in 2050. And about 35% of the food, more in emerging markets than in developed markets, 35% of the food is actually wasted or lost throughout the supply chain post farm gate. So these are some of the challenges that we face, right? And globally, there are about, especially in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia, you have about 450 smallholders that are essential cogs of the food production. And how do you involve them in the overall production of food in a sustainable manner is a challenge that we are facing, and to improve their livelihood. Because how do you give them access to technology, finance, market access to enhance their livelihood so that they become productive parts of the food value chain? That's a significant kind of challenge for all of us to think through. And these challenges remain, these challenges were there even before COVID hit, and then you have COVID. While the supply side remained largely okay, largely thanks to the Southern Hemisphere production, which was not impacted. The demand side and the trade side were affected because of logistical issues. Right? So you had temporary dislocations in food supply, which resulted in temporary increase in food prices. For example, rice. You had temporary storage of rice in many origins, which resulted in higher prices of rice in places like Africa, which can afford those higher prices. You have safety nets being set up. The governments are now strapped for cash. So there's limited room to maneuver in terms of providing assistance to, especially the poorest of poor in the rural areas. You have, the secondary impacts that are setting in, the economic losses, the job losses that are leading to lower affordability, which has severe impacts on nutrition over a longer period of time. So all these are challenges that COVID is posing. However, there are some silver linings, right? So you have significant application of technology that has taken root post-COVID. We're seeing digitization of supply chains. We have e-commerce that's actually taken off significantly. So which presents a new form of developing the food supply chain, since the agriculture side has been least disrupted by the advent of technology over the last maybe 5-10 years. I think agriculture is what ag tech is where fintech was maybe 10-12 years ago, right? So it's actually quite ripe for disruption using technology. And I think it's an interesting proposition for even smallholders to adopt to get along the supply chain in a more meaningful manner. So the key question is, given all these constraints and these developments, how do we build back the food system better? Actually, COVID allows us to reset our position in the food value chain to see how we can actually build back better, build more resilience in the food supply chain, impact the planet a little less so that it's sustainable over a longer period of time. And doing all this, how do we supply the food that's necessary to provide security, food security as a basic human right? So that would be the challenge that our panelists are going to try and address using the experience. And it's going to be quite interesting because while these are universal themes, I'm pretty sure the same applies to a state like Tamil Nadu or broader India. So on that note, I would like to turn to my panelists for them to introduce what they're doing, and then we'll come to how they can think through how we can address some of these issues at a local level. First, I would like to turn to Mr. Krishna Mohan, Chief Resilience Officer of the City of Chennai, to give a brief background about what he does, and then take a quick a few minutes to kind of explain how his work links into some of the broader challenges that we face. Krish?
Yep, thank you, Prasad. Good day to folks listening in from across the universe. Let me start by giving you a quick update on urban farming and then link it to the topic of the day. How do we chart a better course for sustainable agriculture and food systems? Like Prasad said, 70% of the world's population will live in urban centers by the year 2050. Hence, there's an urgent need to strengthen our urban food systems. And COVID-19 has shown the torch on and underlined the need to supplement the city's food supplies, and urban farms are widely regarded as the best way to build resilience and climate change and create healthy, self-reliant societies by improving food security and livelihoods, especially among the urban poor. And Chennai has thousands of acres of flat concrete terraces and open community spaces that are lying unused and therefore present a huge potential for rooftop and community urban farming. Urban horticulture or urban farming is one of the key projects recommended by the Chennai Resilience Strategy report released in June of 2019. The Chennai Resilience Center, supported by the Adrian Arched Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center, will facilitate the implementation of this urban farming initiative. This effort will have a multitude of benefits, apart from improving food security, such as mitigating urban heat, delaying and holding rainwater runoff, and that is something critical for the city to be able to increase the sponge effect of the city to hold our rainwater, livelihood generation for vulnerable communities, especially women and youth, and increasing community cohesion. So the plan is to promote a citywide adoption of urban farming through creating awareness about the benefits of urban farming, promoting soil and water conservation techniques, setting up an effective customer response advisory cell to address urban farming related issues, tying up with an online partner to deliver garden kits to the doorstep. And we're talking to Amazon about that currently. Creating and promoting a network of agricultural related service providers in Chennai. We've already tied up about 30 of them. fundraising and managing an outreach program to deliver free kitchen gardens to vulnerable communities to see the concept of urban homestead farming. And this is going to be the core of our work in 2021. Introducing vegetable gardens in corporation schools that will feed into the midday meal schemes, and also introduce the benefit of solid waste segregation and farm to table journey as part of the school curriculum. And finally, working with the Tamil Nadu Skills Development Corporation, the Tamil Nadu Corporation for the Development of Women, and the Tamil Nadu Horticulture Department to build capacity in urban farming and food processing for women and youth from vulnerable sections of society, and fundraising for the same. But I believe that the greatest challenge or opportunity of all will be to put in place an urban totem social enterprise, a public and private partnership to help set up and maintain urban farms, including rooftop leasing to small farmers, as well as launching a professionally run retail chain to help
royally, I can't use the word, cheated, but exploited. They were royally exploited. So these are the things that I found. And I thought, okay, I'm basically a management person and I have good management skills. Let me take into farming. So that's how I came into farming. And when I embarked on this journey, I didn't have a big vision and all. It was like, let me get into this. Let me produce some good milk for the Chennaites. So that's how I went in. But after going in, I learned a lot about milk and the politics happening in milk and the adulterations, the very basic milk that we are consuming itself is not milk. That's what I got introduced to. I read the books about Keith Woodworth, who has written a book called The Devil in the Milk. I'm sorry. So I read about it and I was really taken aback. There have been so much of genetic mutations and modifications in the milk, in the beta casein and all the other elements of the milk. So this really got me conscious, and I started wondering what's going on and how I can be of some help. So that's when I decided, okay, I can't save the world. That's not me. I'm not a superhero, but at least I can save my circle in the sense my extended circle. I'm a local person. I'm a local person. So if I strengthen my local presence, then probably I can do better. So 10,000 infant is our target. So we want to take the milk from the udder of the cow to the kitchen, at least to where 10,000 infants are there. So for this we need a couple of thousand cows. So that's how we embarked. Now we have 200 cows, and in 2020 December we plan to have 1,000. COVID has given us a big setback, but we are pushing the plans to 2021 December. So we'll be having 1,000 cows, and from there on we'll be heading towards encouraging people to have desi cows, Indian cows, basically. Indian cows produce a different type of milk, from the exotic cows from the European countries. So basically, we want to create awareness, spread awareness amongst the farmers, make them understand about the desi presence and about Gandhian economy and mercantilism. So this is where we are, and we have come up with some innovative concepts like own a cow, like you own your own cow, you collaboratively breed it. So that's where we are. So this is the small introduction about our company. And yes, the name of the company is Arya Dairy Farms.
Thanks, Ahmed. Thank you very much. I think it demonstrates the need for business orientation, entry of businessmen into the space, and actually thinking of farmers as actually businessmen, which they are, in fact. And also the grassroots thinking in terms of influencing your own neighborhood first and then expanding your influence over a period of time. So it's quite interesting what Arya Dairy Farms is doing. So let me turn to now Simon George, President of Cargill India, which is obviously a large multinational. So it'd be great to hear your views on what Cargill and you are up to, and some of your thoughts on the Indian ag system and as it applies to Tamil Nadu. Thank you.
Thank you, Prasad. Good evening to everyone, and thank you the United Economic Forum to invite Cargill and me to this World Summit 2020. Proud of being part of this learned, experienced, and successful panelist. To introduce Cargill. Cargill is a US headquartered global agri and food corporation spread around 70 countries and been working for the 155 years now. Our purpose remains and is a key to our business is to nourish the world in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way. And this almost rings a bell to what topic that we are driving today. In India, Cargill has been in operation since 1987, and we are in the business of refined oils, food ingredients, grains and oilseeds, cotton, animal nutrition, and trade and structured finance. India is an important geography for Cargill, and our consistent investment and growth in this country is a reflection of our commitment into the Indian market. Our topic today is towards a better course of sustainable agriculture and food system. This is what we feel as a very apt and an important topic in today's world. We all know Asia is an engine, is a global growth engine. When I say this, it's because the high growth rates have taken its share of global GDP from about 30% today to about 50% by 2050. Our food system today is facing the pressure of producing, numbers could be plus or minus, is about having 70% more food to feed a population that will cross the 10 billion people by 2050. A huge challenge in front of us. We need to do this like what Prasad was talking, without compromising on our land, water, and the climate as such. So producing more with less is the biggest challenge of facing all of us. And it is not a simple problem that a single organization or a single country can solve it. It is about the ability to the world to come together to resolve this large issue is a big challenge to all of us. Cargill, as an organization, actually commissioned Economic Intelligence Unit, which is part of the EI, to work on what will make this world to meet this expectation, specifically from an Asia front. And they came up with a number of factors. In fact, what they were recommending to Cargill and is about three major factors. One is trade. We need to ensure food is moving to the right place at the right price and has access and affordability to the consumer. Now, if you look at what happened in COVID, COVID was basically a health crisis followed by an economic crisis. Fortunately, it never became a food crisis. And this fundamentally, every government across the world, there could be few issues, but overall, every government played a responsible position of making sure the food supply chain does not get affected. So we strongly believe, for example, in trade, from an India perspective, India is a largely self-sufficient in most key staples and has stressed the need for self-sufficiency. So we heard what the Prime Minister is also talking about, the self-reliance and self-sufficiency. And however, what we believe is that India will face significant challenges in meeting the self-sufficiency targets in the coming years if we are not to change the way we are doing today. The second important point that the report stated was, as once again, this also echoes what both Krish and Prasad were talking about, nutrition. We need to ensure the food we are putting on the people's table is safe and nutritious through just not being nutritious, but through responsible and sustainable supply chain. It's not at the cost of deforestation. It's not at the cost of doing certain things. It is the cost of making sure we have a sustainable model in this world. And the third and the last key factor, what the report said is the farmer itself. We need farmer to be a profitable and sustainable. And if you look at in India, 18% of the GDP is being shared by 58% of the population, which means the average per capita income of a farmer is pretty bad in this country. And unless that becomes profitable, the farming sector will take a big hit as we move forward. So it's important. So, and these are three major things that the recommendation that came to Cargill through this findings. And it also talked about trends, which the previous panelists spoke about: urbanization, dietary transition. India is, for example, more of a carbohydrate-driven country, moving towards protein and energy, nutrition, technology per se. In a country like India, on the farming sector, we spend about 0.04% of our agriculture GDP, while on the contrary, Japan spends about 5%, Korea spends about 2%. So it varies from, we are kind of spend, money that we spend in R&D is pretty low. The other trend which we talk about is also about transparency and sustainability. So how do we ensure today's consumer is discerning and asking from where are you picking up this particular product, which farm and which place? The ability to connect to the world, to the farm is very important. And then, of course, you have food politics. As I said, that 60% of Indian population, for example, depends on agricultural economy, and therefore it's a big vote share. And as urbanization continues, in next few years, when India is actually quite low in terms of urbanization at about 29%, if my number is right, and is moving towards a direction what our panelist was talking to about 60, 70%. At some point of time, the consumer becomes more important than the farmer. So for the politics. So it is important to understand what politics is also plays an important role on whose side we are in terms of, so these were the key findings. And I think we submitted to about some 14 governments across Asia. We submitted this report to the Indian government, and we been requesting various governments for that matter in terms of, well, we should go ahead with a reform considering the difficulties that India will face in the future. Well, today we are self-sufficient, things are good, it's the right time to change certain things. And we really see that the farm reforms that has come is something that we should talk in terms of how it can help us in what topic that we are talking. Over to you, Prasad.
Thanks a lot, Simon. Look, I think big, large conglomerates like Cargill, as well as small local companies like Arya Dairy Farms, are pretty much looking at the same, kind of trying to resolve the same issue, right? How do you enhance food security? How do you enhance livelihood of these smallholder farmers and build it sustainably, right? So these are three common themes that are arising. And our next panelist, Syed Nadeem of Shah's Organic Farms, has pretty interesting observations, I'm sure, on the same topic. So over to you, Nadeem. Please relate your experiences, and as your title suggests, there is something interesting that you're doing on the organic side. So please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I am Syed Nadeem, founder of Shah's Organic Farms and Shah's Agriculture Solutions. We are into agriculture infrastructure like construction of greenhouses, shade net houses, bundles, setting up of hydroponics, aquaponics, and other agriculture technological solutions. And we are also into terrace gardening structures. I started my journey into agriculture around 8 years back as a farmer after leaving my MNC job where I was heading the country operation for few international brands. I started by doing agriculture in a small way and understood that this is not the way it should be done. So agriculture should be considered as any other business or an industry. We need to invest in its infrastructure and technology. And that's how I started my company, Shah's Agriculture Solutions, to help other entrepreneurial farmers like me to show the right path. I tell them that they should look at cash flow rather than booking profits. Whenever a client says that he wants to start an agriculture in an acre, I tell them that the most feasible project would be anything above 5 acres. And in that 5 acres, I tell them to do 2 acres of pandal, a half an acre of shade net, a half an acre of greenhouse, and remaining 2 acres they can do any 2 different vegetables. So this way we can ensure that approximately 1 ton of different vegetables is transported to the market every alternate day at an average selling price of Indian rupees 25 per kilo, which translates to 25,000 Indian rupees of cash flow every other day. And if a client says that he has a lesser number of acres, then I tell him to do the value addition of his produce. So example, I had a client who was doing aloe vera in just about an acre. So I told him, so instead of selling aloe vera as a plant, why don't you sell it as an aloe vera juice or soaps? Similarly, we can also do value additions such as sun-dried chili, sun-dried tomatoes, which actually fetches a high value. To get high value for your produce, a farmer should definitely do value addition. And that's why the tagline of my company, Shah's Agriculture Solution, is turning farmers into entrepreneurs. There are many farmer producer organizations and companies that are popping up, which is bringing all marginal and small landholding farmers together. These FPOs help farmers with the mechanization instruments during harvest and also gives other supports like the best market price. And these FPOs are also supported by government with subsidies and tax rebates for their value addition products. Also, government is supporting the farmers doing greenhouse and shade net house with 50% subsidy that actually works like a private-public partnership. A UEF, Chamber of Commerce, is such a wonderful organization that saw my talent and helped me in this entrepreneurial journey with a lot of contacts that have become my family now. I'm sure UEF could do a lot to farmers. Today, we have more than 10,000 registered participants at this World Summit. So I see that we have every opportunity to start UEF FPO, which is Farmer Producer Organization, that could help at least 10% of our participants to turn into farmpreneurs and bring out new brand of value addition products under UEF soon. Thank you, Mr. Prasad.
No, that's very interesting. Actually, this concept of farmpreneurs, right? I think it's a very interesting. It's again going back to using or thinking about agriculture as a business rather than a task in itself, right? So I think, and so I come from the banking side, so cash flow is king. So I think that's when you have access to finance being constrained, I think focusing on cash flow is obviously of prime importance as a survival instinct almost. So thanks for that, Nadeem. So I just wanted to turn, maybe I'll go back to the panelists, maybe in the same order, just to get a sense, we talked about farming as a business. We talked about how there's both companies, small and large, at the local and the global level, are looking at pretty much the same things, looking at nutrition, looking at the environment, looking at sustainability, looking at safe food, looking at livelihood, right? So those are big, broad themes, right? So how do we kind of bring them down into some digestible kind of bits, whether it be, how do we actually, form these farmer producer organizations? How do we actually provide finance, affordable financing? Is there any technology that can be deployed for providing financing? Is there what are the kinds of technology that can be promoted across the supply chain? How do we reduce waste? I think we discussed I think everybody touched upon these things. Maybe there's let me go back to Krish, you, just to get a sense, I think it's a very interesting concept, right? Urban farming is absolutely, we know, I come from Chennai, so I know how much free space there is. And I'm glad that the government is thinking about using these dead spots as productive zones. So, and for a variety of reasons, I think you raised climate, you raised nutrition, you raised, a whole bunch of positive aspects. But it'll be great to understand from your perspective, right? It contributes, I think, to a lot of elements that we're looking at. But is there anything more that these kinds of private-public partnerships can provide? I think it would be useful to get your views on those.
Yeah, thank you, Prasad. You see, the thing is that I also own a small farm somewhere in the Palmy Hills, and I do realize how difficult it is to convert that into a profitable piece of business. To give an example, we grow avocado on the farm, and the price that I get on the farm is 40 rupees. By the time it's here, it's 40 rupees a kg. By the time it's here, it's 200 rupees a kg. And so we know who's making the money in between. Yeah. So for me, this whole urban horticulture program was also a way of seeing how can the learnings from here actually also help the small farmer. Yeah. So some of the things I want to quickly take you through, and I'll also answer the question that you raised, is through the urban horticulture project, we've learned to maximize yields from small spaces. Yeah. So we're looking at anything between 500 square feet to 2,000 square feet on a terrace. On the ground, anything between 2,000 to 5,000 square feet. So how do we maximize yield in using small spaces? How do we increase economies of scale? So if you're looking at terrace farming in Chennai, can I say that in Adia, we'll only grow tomato and greens. In Ananagar, we'll grow only brinjals and beans. So that, there is some economies of scale that happen. Yeah. Then how do we work with limited resources such as water? We are a water scarce city. So one of the things that we are saying is an absolute must is a drip irrigation system, no matter what the size of your farm is. Then, of course, how do we get the product to market through a cooperative or a retail chain? Now, here is just a out-of-the-box thought, and I'm sure people have thought about it. Can we piggyback on Arvin? So if a cold chain can be used to collect milk from small farmers and medium-sized farmers, why can't we have something similar for horticulture produce? Yeah. Then, of course, coming to using digital technology to bridge the gap between the farmer and the customer. During the lockdown, actually, Tanhoda launched eTotem. And this was a really good initiative from a government department wherein you could actually order vegetables that would be delivered at your doorstep. So very intelligent use of digital technology and using somebody like Dunzo to tie it up and deliver it at home. Yeah? So these are learnings that I think small farmers can adopt as well. Increasing revenue through value addition. So you have some crop. We have coffee, for example, on the farm. How do I go into food processing to increase the value of that and use branding to increase it even further? If you have a strong story to tell, then obviously you make more money on the same product. Better understanding of subsidies. If you talk to the small farmer, he has no clue about what are the subsidies actually available. But we here are able to look at the information that's available and actually tell people, look, there are subsidies on irrigation, drip irrigation, there are subsidies on solar, there are subsidies on water pumps, there are subsidies on pump sets, there are subsidies on agri tools and so on. So that is some information we can share. Right? Then, of course, a better understanding of the benefits of organic farming practices. Thanks to COVID, webinars like this have become part for the course. And we have actually used our webinar systems to teach people, supervisors from the Anganwadis on urban farming itself, the basics of urban farming. Finally, when we look at, if you look at this, one of the key issues a city faces or this country faces is the fact that we don't have enough data. And even if the data is there, it's not talking to each other, right? And therefore, it doesn't help you make those informed decisions. Now, we are putting in place monitoring and evaluation systems to monitor not just the growth and yield, but also the effects of farm on climate change, for example. How much does the temperature drop? So then it affects urban cooling. How much water does your rainfall, does your farm actually absorb and hold? And the ability of the farms to save some carbon as well. So when we're looking at monitoring and evaluation, we're looking at all these parameters as well. And this information will hopefully be available to one and all. We have learnings on how to reduce waste, and increasing livelihood opportunities for the poor, urban poor, and the migrant worker. For example, the migrant farmer who has moved to the city, give them an opportunity to earn a living doing what they know best, which is farming, right? And we also looked at another income stream for the small farmer, particularly those living around the city. Supplementary income for rural farmers by providing farm inputs to urban centers such as seeds, panchakavyam, potting mix, cocoa peat, etc. They're all revenue streams that can be added. And finally, a greater appreciation for what it takes to plant, grow, harvest, and produce food. Better empathy for the farmer, particularly the small farmer. And I want to end by saying that we are on the cusp of launching our urban horticulture project in the city by Jan-Feb of 2021. We will have our model farms in the Greater Chennai Corporation schools, and we will launch our Urban Totem website, which we hope will become the catalyst for making urban farms a citywide project. And as you know, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with few steps, and we are in the process of taking those few steps with a very clear goal in our minds and in our hearts to make Chennai a good example of urban farming best practices.
Thanks, Krish. That's, I think building resilience and actually building a sustainable system is not easy. So there are lots of elements that go into it, obviously, as you've eloquently pointed out, right? I think it's just, but it has to be tried. And it's great that somebody is trying it, especially and you need both the public and the private sector, because neither of them have resources on their own to exclusively address some of these issues, right? So I think, and to take risks as well. So excellent points. Well made, Krish. Thanks. So Ahmad, maybe I'll turn to you. I think you've been helping farmers with domestic breeds, localizing content, and actually building businesses, essentially, right? Making these farmers businessmen. So from your experience, can you talk a little bit about how you're building some of these, aspects in terms of not just resilience, but how can it be sustainable over a long period? And how can you go from the 1,000 to the 10,000 to the 100,000 level?
Well, as I told you in my earlier session, that farmers are dexterous, they are smart, but in city we see them as some people who are not exposed, they are uneducated or illiterate. So that's how we purview them. We see them, but they are very smart. Just that they don't have a sense of direction. They just need little guidance and little push. For example, a farmer does not understand why he has to have a pond. Most of the people, they think a pond is to store water. Actually, a pond is not for storing water. Mr. Krish would also, agree to it. He has done immense research on that. A pond is basically to percolate water, to help water seep into the ground. So most of the farmers, they don't understand this. So we have to make them understand all these small nitty-gritties of farming. Let me give you one more example. Most of us, we irrigate a tree in its root, in its stem, basically. Let's say the tree's stem is here. We pour water here, exactly where the stem is. But actually, the roots of the trees are far away. Charles would also, agree to this. So the roots are basically where the leaves end. Nature has, done it so well. I'm a God believer. So God has designed it so well that when the water from the sky, when the rainwater falls on the leaf, the leaves guide them to the end of the tree, and it drops there, and the roots come there and they pick up the water. So they just don't understand this. Basically, a plant does not need water, it needs nutrition. So how it should get the nutrition? It is suspended in the air. All we have to do is make the nutrition reach the root. So the soil is not allowing it to reach it. So we need to puncture the soil. So we need to invite earthworms. So we feed the earthworms, they come. These basic details are not understood by the farmers. If we make them understand this, then probably farmers would produce 20-30% more. And also we have to make them more conscious. India has this, these facts are going to shock people, people watching. The world has 11% of arable land. The whole entire world has 11% of arable land. India has 59% of these arable land. I mean, in the whole Indian mass, India has 59% arable land. The next comes China, I believe. Yeah, China. China only has 12% arable land. So India's contribution to the world's arable land is 11%, where China only contributes 7%. But the output is tremendous. So we have to make the farmers understand that. See, we have so much of land, but we are not producing the best. So in order to do this, what we have done basically, in my experience, in my team, what we have done is we have tried to connect the urbanites who are exposed to the outside world, to the globalized world, with the farmers. So when we connect these two people, the farmers can interact with these people, and they can get to know what's happening around the world. They can, like Mr. Krish pointed out, the data, they can access data. Accessing data is a beautiful thing. With data, you can produce that particular crop, which will sell nearer to your location. So these are the exposures that they can have. Also, we need to spread awareness amongst the urbanites also. Like most of my friends say, when we come across the toll where we find farmers selling some farm produce for 10 or 20 rupees, all of a sudden my good friends, they become amazing negotiators. How much is it? 10 rupees? No, can you give me for 8 rupees? One farmer, one beautiful farmer asked a beautiful question. He asked, sir, do you ask the same thing in the departmental stores? So basically the urbanites, we are not conscious. So we also have to give this consciousness to the urbanites. You come here, see how he's struggling. You also have to contribute. Why should the farmer always bail you out? Why you don't even make one single call when someone from his family commits suicide? But you have enough time to wish your celebrities for their happy birthdays. So we have to make these people also conscious. So we have to create a bridge where these urbanites and farmers connect, so that they understand each other's needs and demands, thus eradicating the middlemen. So these are some of the things that needs to be done. One more thing is, the farm folks, most of the rural folks, they have a different kind of communication. I would rather say they have a different language. We speak the same language, maybe Tamil, but they have different Tamil than this Tamil. The communication is totally different. So we need to make people understand what's happening, and we need to bring more people into farming, more people with funds, rather, I would say, people who can invest. They have funds, they have globalization, they have technology. Probably they can bring this into farming. To the farming experts, the farmers are basically experts. They can fund them, organize them, manage them, and then guide them and get these things, these products, produced and sold. By this way, I think the farmers also will become richer and contribute to the Indian economy. So this is.
Thanks, Ahmad. Thought-provoking, obviously, and education plays a large part of the equation as well. So let me turn to Simon. I think you raised a point where I know Cargill does a lot on, which is on supply chains and helping smallholders and working with smallholders and integrating them into, creating market linkages, paying a fair price, and having solid extension services that you talk about, on the education side as well. So maybe, Simon, you can touch upon some of these issues that Cargill is obviously has been doing for probably over 100 years, I think. So, and in many of these emerging markets where they work with smallholders. So it'll be great to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, Prasad, I think from what I heard from a previous panelist, there are a lot of things that they have spoken, which spoke about their entrepreneurial skills. Now, when you look at, when I started off, we said the larger issues the country is facing and why agriculture is important. And most of them we're talking about actually is being reflected in what the new policies all are about. If you really look at it from perspective, we need a macroeconomic agricultural change in this country. And if we don't do that, the whole thing that we are talking about, small farmers, how they get connected, what to be done, there has to be huge investment. Now, I always correlate this to the 1991 liberalization time. As I always tell to a lot of people that, within 1991 and today, India had actually taken 250 to 275 million people out of poverty. And I think this is one of the kind of in the human history. And this is because we took a decision as a country to go ahead with the liberalization in 1991. And there are many who said it will not work in India. Similarly, in agriculture is a sector which requires a lot of infrastructure, money to make this happen. And if whatever that your question, Prasad, basically to the small farmers, we need to bring infrastructure at his place. If he has to survive, he has to make more money. Very clearly, if you look at both dairy and poultry, there's no government intervention there. The farmers are doing well there. And if you look at from a dairy, a very clear example where India is a leader in terms of how we did the revolution, all we need to do is control copy, control V, but we are not doing it. Now, if you look at the milk one, the price which the farmer gets there is 70% of the selling price. But when it comes to a farming product, he gets between 25 to 45%. Now you see, what is lacking? It is not about government intervention. It's about making the farmer a real businessman. And really, so the point is keep politics away. And if you look at the policies, what the government has announced now, whether it's contract farming, whether it is the stocking capability of removing the Essential Commodity Act, and it allows huge private investment. So now you're talking about somebody from US, somebody from any part of the world will come and invest in a country and invest for the farmer. Now look at what it can mean to a farmer. It can actually increase his earning capability. Now, my point of view is that today we know that, for example, in the horticulture, wastage is the biggest problem there. If I understand right, we waste about 40% to 45% is wasted. Now imagine if you bring the cold chains, if you bring in the investment there, it's absolutely that 45% is going to, and just imagine like milk, which degrades in the same day, he is able to give a tomato to that logistics center. You're done. So imagine the farmer is saying. So there are many things that we do, Prasad. In fact, we have an initiative called, which is called as the hoping. The hope basically telling is all the agriculture farmers why poultry can be a business to them along with, so it addresses the protein requirement of the country. It also requires additional income to the farmer. So I genuinely feel, I know there are positives and negatives of any reform in the country. And I always say that it's good that we take the people along as we reform, but it's an important step. And this is the starting of Indian reforms in agriculture where nothing has happened for ages. And I think if we can take this step forward and we see success, you saw what happened. It was a Narasimha Rao government, but every government who came after that are talking about liberalization. So I believe this farm reform will change this country from an agriculture and will help the small farmer and the large farmer in different ways, but it will be a much better living than what we've been doing before.
Oh, thanks, Simon, for those observations. I know that Cargill actually, we work with Cargill in many places. So I think the last mile link that Cargill provides for even the smallholder. I know it's a huge corporation that sources from around the world. I think where they deliver the last mile link, you deliver it with, with knowledge, with technology, with fair price. So I think all those also make it an important proposition. You need both the small actors acting entrepreneurially as well as the big actors who can actually perform the market link mechanism as well. So very well made points.
Prasad, if I can add one point more, Prasad, if you don't mind.
Sure.
It's also about market access. It's important. What is happening is, if you do not bring market access, if you can, I always say, if you can take an Indian farmer of a particular produce to where it is most wanted, he gets a maximum price. And this is what is very, very critical. So somebody, what we're talking about, how a particular milk, you can sell 100 rupees when it's locally sold. It's all about that. So I believe, so that's just an example. One more thing that I said.
Point well made, Sam. Point well made. Look, we turn to Nadeem. I think we were discussing all these things. Actually, the market access. I think Nadeem, you provide a lot of these things to to the people that you work with. So over to you. So please share some thoughts. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left. So if you can keep your feedback within 3-4 minutes, that'll be great. Appreciate it.
So as I mentioned that, for example, a small farmer has to join an FPO and make it as a cooperative, something like how you have with your milk. So you need to join together, and then if you can transport your goods to the market, so that's where your transportation comes down. And also today, with the access of the digital so innovation, we know what is the price here. For example, if there is a farm which is maybe say it is close to the Tirupati, so we know that we have about 3 markets. That is, we can sell our produce to Chennai market, we can sell it to the Tirupati market, or we can even sell it to Chittoor market. So and we always know what is the price. There's basically an app from the government which tells you in which market which vegetable has what price. So a farmer can basically look into it and then transport his goods accordingly. Again, you need to join together. So this is what I tell all my clients. So even if you have say if you have so another farmer next to your land, to help them, because tomorrow it will be a good thing. And if we don't do it, tomorrow somebody is going to come from abroad. They are going to take our lands and they are going to do contract farming.
I think in a commodity space, as we all know, consolidation makes the cost go lower, right? You spread your fixed costs across a lot more tonnage. So clearly you have higher bargaining power. Absolutely. I think you raise a very important point. Now, look, I think we have come to it's been excellent. Look, we can go on for, this is what I do. Ahmed, by the way, I'm not a agricultural scientist or agri person. Neither do I run farms, but I'm a chemical engineer by training. But this interests me because of what it can, this space it's an essential for living. It's one of the 3, food, clothing, and shelter are the 3 ingredients. Movies have been made in India about those. So I think from my perspective, it's just a fascinating subject. We've all talked about a variety of issues in this webinar. I think just to summarize, I just would like to spend a minute to just highlight a few things. I think Krish addressed the concept of innovation. I think what Chennai, if we can kick this off and if we can feed the city kids the midday meal schemes, we supplement that with the produce that comes from farms, which is high quality, safe, trace, with very limited climate footprint. I think it's a fantastic innovation. I think Chennai can actually lead the way other cities can follow. I think I think that's fascinating. Ahmed, you talked about business, business skills for farmers. How do farmers are, they know what they do. They're very skilled at what they do. But how do you build the infrastructure of business around them? Get the the business mentality around how they operate. I think that's, and every farmer is willing to learn. And especially if you look at, women in the farming community, I think they absorb far more than, male farmers. So, and they stick to the job a lot more than the male counterparts, right? So we've had this experience from all around the world. So that's how do you imbibe business skills, educate them a little bit more? I think that's a fantastic thing you mentioned, right? And Simon, look, I think from a Cargill perspective, you raised very important macro issues in terms of setting the right framework for the country to kind of leapfrog, some of the challenges that we have. Now you have technology, now you have people, the farmers can produce with the enabling policies. I think they can adopt many of these, tools that are available to them on a much more transparent way and link to markets and be a much more productive kind of part of the whole ecosystem. So I think, and companies like Cargill are essential cogs in that whole ecosystem. I think you raised, and the three elements that you mentioned in your study, in terms of nutrition, in terms of livelihood and sustainability are universal themes. I see this across the board, and Tamil Nadu is no exception. It's water short, it's urbanizing, labor is short in rural areas, and livelihood for smallholders, as you heard Ahmed and Nadeem, livelihood is a challenge in rural areas, especially with COVID. So points extremely well made and eloquently made. And Nadeem, the farmer producer organization, aggregation, and actually adding value. I think you're talking about adding value to what they do from, doing organic or doing something which is slightly different. It does make a huge difference in the farmer's income and livelihood. So look, these are all extremely well made points, and one of the things we didn't touch upon, which is, a couple of things we touched upon, which are very interesting, are the public-private partnerships. I think what can, a forum like this do to bring public and private sector together? Because on its own, you need enabling policies. Sometimes the government should be involved, sometimes it should just stay away. When to do, what to do is actually very, very important. And how do you encourage private sector to come in and deliver its maximum potential? I think that's a fundamental. And how do you kind of absorb people like Ahmed, who's a businessman from a consulting background coming into the ag sector? How do you, make agriculture more sexy for people to come in? And retain them in the sector is a challenge, right? So which needs both public and private partnerships. And I think this forum can be a very good kind of conduit to bring the two together in a more sustainable manner. The second one is education. I think, making agriculture, it's not a science, just the task of agriculture may be better incorporated, right? I think, Krish, you mentioned, from school education to, make it a more, why have chemistry? You can also have ag as a subject, right? So, or food science, or, you have it in most colleges and universities. Why can't Loyola College have it? Or Vivekananda. So I don't know. So these are some things, which could be looked at as a curriculum enhancer, right? And then the third is, we talked about technology, which is actually, it's very interesting. I'm so happy to hear that technology is there in Tamil Nadu and it's being adopted eagerly. So I think that's a fantastic thing. The last one we didn't touch upon, which would be interesting to, another debate, is on financing. How do we actually, because you have, Ahmad and I discussed in the last, in a previous call, you can't pay 30% interest and survive in agriculture. So how do you actually, and now you have digital mechanisms to actually have credit scoring and other things. How can we bring that to bear throughout the supply chain and make it much more efficient in terms of financing these farmers, right? So I think there are some of these challenges which are still addressable. And for this, we need both sectors. Look, I work for a quasi kind of multinational institution, development institution, and our board is run by the governments of the world, but we have private sector principles. We have to be commercially minded, plus we have to have an impact. I think if we have those kinds of elements, we have to have both the public and private sector joining. And a platform like UEF could be a fantastic forum for organizing and getting people together and meeting of minds to actually push some of these reforms and agendas, the policies that Simon was talking about. So, look, I just want to end by thanking all of you look, I can go on for hours, and I hope to see you in person whenever flights open up. And when I'm back in Chennai, I'll look into your work, and I'll be more than happy to follow up on things that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We now put the spotlight on young entrepreneurs poised to be tomorrow's leaders. These young Turks share opportunities and challenges that need to be addressed and to create a thinking ecosystem that helps converting ideas to meaningful businesses in the knowledge era. Kickstarting our most